Ever wondered why some people seem to have an invisible force field around them? Why they can spot fake behavior from a mile away and won't put up with certain things that others might just brush off? Well, if you're dealing with an INFJ, one of the rarest personality types in the world, you're looking at someone who's got some pretty firm boundaries. These folks make up just 1 to 3% of the population, and let me tell you, they've got zero tolerance for certain behaviors that might fly with other people. Today, we're diving deep into the mind of an INFJ to understand exactly what makes them tick, and more importantly, what makes them completely shut down. Whether you're an INFJ yourself trying to understand your own reactions, or you're trying to build better relationships with the INFJs in your life, this video's going to give you some serious insights. So buckle up, because we're about to explore the 10 things that INFJs absolutely, positively will not tolerate from anyone, and trust me, some of these might surprise you. 1. Dishonesty and deception. Let's start with the big one, and I mean the big one. INFJs have what you might call a built-in lie detector. It's not magic, though it might seem like it sometimes. These people are incredibly intuitive, and they can pick up on inconsistencies in your story, body language, and energy that most folks would miss completely. Here's the thing about INFJs and honesty. It's not just about telling the truth. It's about authentic communication. They can sense when you're being evasive, when you're telling half-truths, or when you're putting on a show. And once they catch you in a lie, game over. Seriously. INFJs value authenticity above almost everything else. They'd rather hear a harsh truth than a comfortable lie. When someone lies to them, it's not just about the specific lie, it's about the breach of trust, the disrespect for their intelligence, and the violation of their core values. The really tricky part is that INFJs often won't call you out immediately. They might give you a chance to come clean, waiting to see if you'll correct yourself. But if you double down on the lie or keep weaving more deception, that's when they start pulling away. They won't make a scene, they won't create drama, they'll just quietly distance themselves from you. And here's what's really important to understand. Once an INFJ loses trust in you, it's incredibly difficult to get it back. They might forgive you, but they won't forget. They'll always have that little voice in the back of their head questioning whether you're being completely honest with them. 2. Manipulation and emotional games. INFJs are empaths, but don't mistake that for weakness. In fact, their high emotional intelligence makes them incredibly skilled at spotting manipulation tactics. They can see through guilt trips, passive-aggressive behavior, and emotional manipulation like it's written in neon lights. What makes this particularly frustrating for INFJs is that their empathetic nature makes them natural targets for manipulative people. Energy vampires, narcissists, and other toxic personalities are often drawn to INFJs because they seem caring and understanding. But here's the kicker. INFJs have excellent pattern recognition. They'll notice when someone only calls them when they need something. They'll pick up on the subtle ways people try to make them feel guilty or obligated. They can spot love bombing, triangulation, and other manipulation tactics because they've likely experienced them before and learned to recognize the signs. When an INFJ realizes they're being manipulated, their response is swift and decisive. They don't engage in the games. They don't try to out-manipulate the manipulator. They simply remove themselves from the situation. They'll gray rock you, go no contact, or find other ways to protect their energy and well-being. The thing is, INFJs are incredibly giving people. They want to help, they want to support others, and they genuinely care about people's well-being. But when someone tries to exploit that giving nature through manipulation, it triggers something deep within them. It's like trying to poison a well. They'll shut off access completely rather than risk being contaminated. 3. Disrespect for their values and beliefs. INFJs don't just have opinions, they have deeply held values that form the core of who they are. These aren't casual preferences or trendy viewpoints they picked up somewhere. These are fundamental beliefs about right and wrong, about how people should treat each other, about what makes life meaningful. When someone disrespects these core values, it's not just an intellectual disagreement for an INFJ, it's a personal attack. They can handle people having different opinions, but they can't tolerate people who mock, dismiss, or actively oppose their deeply held beliefs. Here's where it gets interesting though. INFJs are actually pretty open to different perspectives, as long as they're presented respectfully. They love deep, meaningful conversations about values, ethics, and beliefs. They're curious about how other people see the world, and they're willing to consider new ideas. But there's a huge difference between saying, "I see things differently," and saying, "Your beliefs are stupid," or "You're naive for caring about that." The first opens up dialogue, the second shuts it down completely. INFJs also can't stand when people are inconsistent with their stated values. If you claim to value honesty but lie regularly, if you say you care about justice but support unfair systems, If you talk about compassion but treat people cruelly, the INFJ will notice these contradictions and lose respect for you. They're looking for authenticity and integrity, not perfection. They understand that people are complex and sometimes fail to live up to their ideals. But they need to see that you're at least trying to align your actions with your values, and that you're open to growth and self-reflection. 4. Invasion of privacy and personal space. INFJs are intensely private people. They might seem open and friendly on the surface, but there are layers to their personality that they only share with a select few. They need their personal space, both physical and emotional, to recharge and process their thoughts and feelings. When someone doesn't respect these boundaries, it triggers a strong defensive response in INFJs. They can't tolerate people who push for personal information they're not ready to share, who invade their physical space without permission, or who don't respect their need for alone time. This isn't about being antisocial or secretive. INFJs can be incredibly warm and caring with people they trust. But they're selective about who they let into their inner circle, and they need to control the pace at which relationships develop. Some people try to force intimacy by asking overly personal questions, showing up uninvited, or demanding immediate closeness. This approach backfires spectacularly with INFJs. They'll clam up, pull away, and put up walls that are very difficult to break down. INFJs also need advance notice for most social interactions. They don't do well with surprise visits or last-minute invitations to big social events. They need time to mentally prepare to make sure they have enough energy to engage meaningfully with others. When someone repeatedly ignores these needs or makes the INFJ feel guilty for having boundaries, the INFJ will eventually cut off contact. They'd rather be alone than deal with someone who doesn't respect their basic needs for privacy and space. 5. Superficial relationships and small talk. Here's something that might surprise you: INFJs can't stand shallow relationships. They're not interested in surface-level friendships that never go deeper than talking about the weather or what happened on last night's TV show. This doesn't mean INFJs are social snobs or that they think they're better than other people. It's just that they have limited social energy, and they want to spend it on connections that feel meaningful and authentic. INFJs crave deep, substantial conversations. They want to know what makes you tick, what you're passionate about, what keeps you up at night. They want to understand your dreams, your fears, your values. They want to connect with your authentic self, not the mask you wear in public. When someone insists on keeping things light and superficial, when they deflect every attempt at deeper conversation, when they seem content with a relationship that never moves beyond pleasantries, the INFJ will gradually lose interest and pull away. They're also incredibly frustrated by people who seem to have no depth or self-awareness. If you can't or won't engage in meaningful conversation, if you don't seem to think about anything beyond immediate pleasures and concerns, if you have no interest in personal growth or understanding, the INFJ will struggle to maintain a connection with you. This can make INFJs seem demanding or high maintenance, but it's really about their need for authentic connection. They'd rather have 1 or 2 deep friendships than a dozen superficial ones. 6. Constant negativity and drama. INFJs are naturally empathetic, which means they absorb the emotions of people around them. This makes them incredibly sensitive to negative energy, and they can't tolerate being around people who are constantly complaining, creating drama, or spreading negativity. Now, this isn't about having problems or going through tough times. INFJs are actually amazing friends when you're struggling with something real. They're excellent listeners, they offer thoughtful advice, and they'll support you through genuine difficulties. The problem comes when someone seems to thrive on drama, when they create problems where none exist, when they're constantly looking for things to complain about. INFJs can sense when someone is being dramatic for attention, when they're exaggerating problems, or when they're addicted to chaos. INFJs also can't stand people who are perpetually negative about everything. If you never have anything positive to say, if you shoot down every idea, if you seem to find fault with everything and everyone, the INFJ will start avoiding you. They need positivity and hope in their lives. They're naturally idealistic, and they need to be around people who share their belief that things can get better, that people can grow and change, that the world has beauty and meaning. When someone's constant negativity starts affecting the INFJ's own mental health and outlook, they'll protect themselves by limiting or ending contact. They can't sacrifice their own well-being to support someone who seems determined to stay miserable. 7. Disregard for others' feelings. INFJs are incredibly sensitive to how people treat others. They can't tolerate people who are cruel, dismissive, or inconsiderate toward others, especially those who are vulnerable or different. This goes beyond just being rude or impolite. INFJs are watching to see if you have empathy, if you consider how your actions affect others, if you treat people with basic human dignity regardless of their social status or what they can do for you. They'll notice if you're rude to wait staff, if you ignore homeless people, if you talk down to people you perceive as less intelligent or successful. They'll see if you gossip cruelly about others, if you take pleasure in others' misfortunes, if you're dismissive of people's feelings and experiences. INFJs believe strongly in treating all people with respect and kindness. They can't form close relationships with people who lack empathy or who seem to enjoy hurting others. Even if you're nice to them personally, if they see you treating others poorly, they'll lose respect for you. This is also about consistency of character. INFJs are looking for people who are genuinely good, not people who are just good when it benefits them. They want to know that you'll be kind and considerate even when no one is watching, even when there's nothing in it for you. When they see someone being consistently cruel or thoughtless toward others, they'll assume that person will eventually treat them the same way. They won't stick around to find out if they're right. 8. Controlling and dominating behavior. INFJs value their independence and autonomy highly. They can't tolerate people who try to control them, make decisions for them, or force them to conform to someone else's expectations. This includes people who try to tell them how to think, how to feel, what to believe, or how to live their lives. INFJs are deep thinkers who form their own opinions based on careful consideration and reflection. They don't appreciate people who try to pressure them into adopting certain viewpoints or making specific choices. INFJs also can't stand people who don't respect their boundaries or who try to override their decisions. If an INFJ says no to something, they mean no. They've thought about it, they've made their decision, and they don't appreciate being pressured, guilt-tripped, or manipulated into changing their mind. This extends to people who try to control their time, their relationships, or their activities. INFJs need freedom to pursue their interests, to spend time with people they choose, and to make their own schedule. They can't tolerate partners or friends who are possessive, jealous, or demanding. The thing is, INFJs are actually quite accommodating when they feel respected and valued. They're happy to compromise, to consider others' needs, and to make adjustments to maintain harmony. But the moment they feel like someone is trying to control or dominate them, they'll become resistant and eventually pull away. They need to feel like equals in their relationships, not like subordinates or possessions. They want partners and friends who respect their autonomy and support their independence, not people who try to mold them into someone else's ideal. 9. Inconsistency and unreliability. INFJs value stability and consistency in their relationships. They can't tolerate people who are unpredictable, who say one thing and do another, or who can't be counted on to follow through on their commitments. This doesn't mean INFJs expect perfection or that they can't handle people having bad days or making mistakes. What they can't tolerate is a pattern of unreliability, where someone repeatedly fails to do what they say they'll do or where their behavior is so inconsistent that the INFJ never knows what to expect. INFJs are planners. They think carefully about their commitments and they take their promises seriously. When someone else treats commitments casually, when they frequently cancel plans at the last minute, when they make promises they don't keep, it creates stress and frustration for the INFJ. They also struggle with people whose personality seems to change depending on who they're with or what situation they're in. INFJs value authenticity, and they need to know who they're dealing with. If someone acts completely different around different people, if their values and opinions seem to shift based on what's convenient, if they seem to have no core sense of self, the INFJ will find it difficult to trust or connect with them. This is also about emotional consistency. INFJs can handle people having different moods and emotions, but they struggle with people who are volatile or unpredictable in their emotional responses. They need to feel safe in their relationships, and that safety comes from knowing generally what to expect from the other person. 10. Lack of personal growth and self-awareness. Finally, INFJs can't tolerate people who have no interest in personal growth or self-improvement. They're naturally introspective people who are constantly working on themselves, trying to understand their own motivations, and striving to become better versions of themselves. They expect the same from others, not necessarily to the same degree, but they need to see that someone is capable of self-reflection, that they're open to feedback, and that they're willing to acknowledge their mistakes and learn from them. INFJs can't stand people who blame everyone else for their problems, who never take responsibility for their actions, or who seem to have no desire to grow or change. They're particularly frustrated by people who make the same mistakes over and over again without learning anything from the experience. This isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. INFJs understand that everyone is a work in progress. What they need is to see that someone is actually progressing, that they're putting in some effort to understand themselves and improve their relationships in their life. They also can't tolerate people who are completely lacking in self-awareness, who don't understand how their behavior affects others, or who seem to have no insight into their own motivations and patterns. INFJs are drawn to people who are thoughtful, reflective, and genuinely interested in becoming better human beings. When someone shows no interest in personal growth, when they're satisfied with staying exactly as they are regardless of how their behavior affects others, when they resist any suggestion that they might need to change or improve, the INFJ will eventually give up on the relationship. Understanding the INFJ mindset. Now that we've covered the 10 things INFJs can't tolerate, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Understanding these deal breakers isn't just about knowing what to avoid if you want to maintain a relationship with an INFJ. It's about understanding the deeper values and needs that drive their behavior. INFJs are guided by a strong sense of integrity and authenticity. They want to live in alignment with their values, and they want to surround themselves with people who share that commitment to authenticity. They're not interested in superficial connections or relationships built on convenience or mutual benefit. They want deep, meaningful connections with people who are genuine and trustworthy. INFJs also have a strong need for emotional safety and stability. They're sensitive people who feel things deeply, and they need to feel secure in their relationships. When someone's behavior creates uncertainty, stress, or emotional chaos, the INFJ will protect themselves by creating distance. This isn't about being judgmental or having unrealistic expectations. INFJs aren't expecting people to be perfect. They're looking for people who are committed to being their best selves, who treat others with respect and kindness, and who are capable of authentic, meaningful connection. The INFJ's response to intolerable behavior. When INFJs encounter behavior they can't tolerate, their response is typically measured and deliberate. They don't usually explode in anger or create dramatic confrontations. Instead, they'll often start by creating subtle distance, hoping the other person will pick up on their discomfort and adjust their behavior. If the behavior continues, INFJs will often try to address it directly, but in a gentle, non-confrontational way. They might express their feelings or set boundaries, hoping to preserve the relationship while protecting themselves. However, if the behavior persists and the other person shows no willingness to change or respect their boundaries, INFJs will eventually cut off contact. This decision isn't made lightly. INFJs hate disappointing others and ending relationships. But they've learned that their mental health and well-being depend on surrounding themselves with people who share their values and treat them with respect. This process can be confusing for people who don't understand the INFJ mindset. They might wonder why the INFJ seems to have gone from warm and friendly to cold and distant overnight. The truth is, the INFJ has probably been struggling with the situation for a while, trying to make it work, before finally deciding that the relationship isn't sustainable. Building positive relationships with INFJs. If you want to build a strong, lasting relationship with an INFJ, focus on being authentic, consistent, and respectful. Be honest in your communications, follow through on your commitments, and respect their boundaries and need for space. Show genuine interest in meaningful conversation and connection. Ask thoughtful questions, share your own thoughts and feelings, and be willing to go deeper than surface-level interactions. INFJs love people who are curious, reflective, and genuinely interested in understanding others. Be patient with their need for processing time. INFJs often need to think things through before responding, especially in emotional situations. Don't pressure them for immediate answers or reactions. Give them space to process and they'll come back to you with thoughtful, considered responses. Respect their values and beliefs, even if you don't share them. You don't have to agree with everything an INFJ thinks or believes, but you should respect their right to have their own opinions and avoid dismissing or mocking things that are important to them. Finally, be committed to your own personal growth and self-awareness. INFJs are attracted to people who are working on themselves, who are open to feedback, and who are genuinely interested in becoming better human beings. Show that you're willing to learn, grow, and change, and you'll find that INFJs are incredibly loyal and supportive friends and partners. Conclusion. Understanding what INFJs can't tolerate isn't about walking on eggshells or trying to be someone you're not. It's about recognizing that INFJs have specific needs and values that guide their relationships, and that respecting those needs creates the foundation for deep, meaningful connections. INFJs aren't asking for perfection. They're asking for authenticity, respect, and genuine connection. They want to be surrounded by people who are committed to growth, who treat others with kindness, and who are capable of honest, meaningful relationships. If you're an INFJ yourself, hopefully this video has helped you understand your own reactions and boundaries better. It's okay to have standards for your relationships. It's okay to walk away from people who don't respect your values or treat you well. Your sensitivity and empathy are gifts, not weaknesses, and you deserve relationships that honor and appreciate those qualities. And if you're trying to understand the INFJs in your life, remember that their boundaries come from a place of self-preservation and a desire for authentic connection. They're not trying to be difficult or demanding, they're trying to create relationships that are meaningful, respectful, and sustainable. The beautiful thing about INFJs is that when they do find people who share their values and respect their boundaries, they're incredibly loyal, supportive, and loving friends and partners. They'll invest deeply in those relationships, offering their time, energy, and emotional support generously. So whether you're an INFJ or someone who loves an INFJ, remember that these boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out, they're foundations meant to support relationships that can go the distance. Respect them, honor them, and you'll find that INFJs are some of the most rewarding people to have in your life. Thanks for watching, and remember, understanding personality types isn't about putting people in boxes, it's about appreciating the beautiful diversity of human nature and learning how to connect with each other in more meaningful ways.